Dark piano music fades and slow heartbeat sound underneath. Narrator, calm but tense tone. She was brilliant, respected, and deeply loved, a doctor who dedicated her life to saving others. But one quiet night in Cedarbrook, someone turned her own home into the scene of a perfect murder. The wine was half full, the dinner untouched, and her body lying perfectly still on the kitchen floor, as if she'd just fallen asleep. No forced entry, no struggle, no fingerprints, no mistakes. Police called it the cleanest crime scene they had ever seen. And yet behind that perfect silence was a mind so calculated, so careful, that it fooled everyone, even the detectives. Was it her husband, her lover, or someone no one ever suspected? Because in this story, every clue points to someone innocent, and the real killer may still be out there. It was a murder that didn't look like a murder, a death so precise, so elegantly disguised, that even the detective sworn to expose lies couldn't see through the illusion. In the quiet town of Maplewood Heights, a place where the nights were calm and the loudest sound was a whisper wind through oak trees, tragedy hid behind perfection. Residents took pride in safety. People left doors unlocked and waved at mail carriers by name. That sense of comfort made what happened on the evening of May 12th, 2014, feel like a rupture in reality, as if innocence itself had been murdered. The victim was Laura Whitmore, 33 years old, an art teacher at Evergreen High School. She was known for her soft voice, her habit of sketching birds during lunch, and her ability to turn troubled students into dreamers. Her life was stable. A modest house on Willow Lane, a close circle of friends, and a golden-haired cat named Miso that neighbors adored. That Friday night, Laura hosted a small dinner party. It wasn't lavish, just 6 friends, homemade lasagna, candles glowing on the table, an old jazz playlist humming softly in the background. There was laughter, the clink of glasses, the scent of baked bread, an evening that looked like peace itself. By 11 p.m., the guests began to leave. A light rain had started, and the reflection of headlights danced across the wet pavement. One of her friends, Sophie Green, remembered Laura standing at the doorway, smiling as she waved goodbye. She looked happy, Sophie would later tell investigators. She hugged me, said she finally felt at peace with everything. I remember thinking how calm she looked. It was the last time anyone saw Laura alive. The next morning, when Laura didn't show up for her Saturday art workshop, her colleague Ben Marshall grew worried. He called, texted, even stopped by her house. No answer. The front door was locked, the curtains drawn. Nothing unusual, except the silence. Ben eventually called the police for a welfare check. When officers arrived, everything seemed normal at first glance. No sign of forced entry. No broken glass. No chaos. The air smelled faintly of lavender from a diffuser, still running in the corner. Then they found her. Laura was lying on her living room rug, near the coffee table, her body perfectly still. A half-full glass of red wine rested beside her hand. Another glass sat untouched on the table across from her, as though someone else had been there. There were no bruises, no blood, no weapon. Her expression was peaceful, almost serene, as if she'd simply drifted to sleep. The officers radioed in a possible medical emergency, but it was too late. Paramedics confirmed she was gone. The initial assumption was accidental death, a heart attack. Maybe. Laura was young but under stress. The breakup with her boyfriend Evan Blake months earlier had left her drained. Neighbors said she'd been quieter lately. The police chalked it up to exhaustion, perhaps alcohol and medication mixed. Detective Ryan Cole, a seasoned investigator with 20 years on the force, walked through the scene carefully. Everything felt arranged. The lighting, the placement of objects, even the smell of lavender, it all felt staged. His gut told him something was off. He noticed the smallest details, the faint indentation of a wine bottle on the counter, fingerprints wiped clean from the second glass, and the front door locked from the inside. Even stranger, Laura's security camera, mounted right above her door, had gone offline at 9:47 p.m., less than 2 hours before she likely died. Either the universe has a dark sense of irony, he muttered, or someone just wrote the perfect script. As forensic teams worked the scene, Laura's friends gathered outside, shivering under umbrellas. None of them could understand it. Just the night before, she'd been laughing, dancing, talking about a new art exhibit. Evan Blake arrived at the scene later that afternoon. Tall, sharply dressed, with controlled demeanor that made reporters take notice. His reaction was calm, too calm. When an officer informed him of Laura's death, he simply nodded, whispered, "I knew something was wrong," and turned away. Detective Cole logged it all in his notebook. Calmness could be grief. It could also be guilt. Over the next few days, Maplewood Heights became the center of quiet speculation. News vans lined the street. Neighbors whispered about what might have happened. Some said Laura had been depressed. Others claimed they saw a shadowy figure outside her house that night. Everyone had a theory. No one had proof. The official report listed pending cause of death. Toxicology tests were ordered, but Cole couldn't stop replaying the scene in his mind. No forced entry. Locked door. Offline camera. 2 glasses of wine. And then he remembered one more detail. Laura's phone was missing. Not misplaced, gone. Her purse was there, her wallet untouched, but her phone and laptop were nowhere to be found. If it was suicide, why remove her electronics? If it was an accident, who cleaned the second glass? If it was murder, how did the killer leave with every door locked from the inside? The questions built a storm inside him. At Laura's funeral a week later, hundreds gathered. Her students painted white lilies and taped them to her casket. The church echoed with soft sobs. Evan sat in the front row, head bowed, a perfect picture of heartbreak. Yet Detective Cole couldn't ignore the faint smirk that crossed his face when no one else was looking. By evening, the town lights dimmed and reporters moved on. But Cole stayed behind at the station, staring at the evidence board, the photographs of Laura's living room pinned in perfect sequence. Everything looked too neat. And that's when he said the words that would define the investigation. This isn't just murder. This is choreography. He didn't yet know how right he was. But as he dug deeper into Laura Whitmore's final hours, he would soon uncover a labyrinth of lies, obsession, and revenge, a crime so flawlessly crafted that even the police, for a time, believed they were looking at an accident, the perfect illusion, the perfect death, the perfect murder. The morning after the dinner party, the peaceful town of Cedarbrook awoke to something it had never seen before. The usually quiet neighborhood of Oak Ridge Drive was crawling with flashing red and blue lights. Police tape fluttered in the breeze. The air smelled faintly of rain and fear. Inside the beautiful stone house at the end of the street, the home of Dr. Rebecca Hale, the perfect picture of suburban success, had just shattered. Detective Evan Cross, a 15-year veteran of the force, was one of the first on the scene. He described the moment he stepped inside as something out of a movie, but one where the ending had gone terribly wrong. Rebecca lay motionless on the floor of her kitchen, a glass of red wine spilled beside her hand, staining the marble floor like blood. The first assumption? A tragic accident. Maybe a fall, maybe a fainting spell. But something about the scene didn't feel right. The house was immaculate. Too immaculate. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing broken. No sign of a struggle. The only clue was a faint perfume in the air, not Rebecca's usual scent, and a single earring found near the counter. Not hers. Rebecca's husband, Daniel Hale, was the one who had called 911. His voice on the emergency recording trembled as he said, I think my wife is dead." The operator asked if she was breathing. Daniel's voice cracked. "No, she's cold." Daniel told the officers he had been out late on a business dinner with a client and found his wife like this when he returned. He seemed distraught, almost broken. The neighbors vouched for him. They saw his car pull into the driveway just before midnight. Everything pointed toward an unfortunate accident. But Detective Cross couldn't shake that uneasy feeling. There were no bruises consistent with a fall, no head wound, no signs of a medical episode. The toxicology report would later reveal something even stranger, a lethal dose of digitalis, a rare heart medication, in Rebecca's system. The same drug she prescribed to her own patients. That changed everything. Now this was no accident. It was murder, one that had been planned with terrifying precision. The investigation took a sharp turn. Detectives went through Rebecca's phone, emails, and security footage. They found nothing unusual, No forced entry, no threatening messages, no signs of blackmail or fear. Her patients adored her colleagues respected her, and her family seemed picture perfect. But then came the first crack in the image of a perfect marriage. A co-worker mentioned that Rebecca had recently confided about feeling watched. She said someone had been following her car for days. Her assistant recalled Rebecca asking to change the locks just 2 weeks before her death. Who would want to hurt her, and why? When police dug deeper into Daniel's alibi, they discovered something chilling. The client dinner he mentioned wasn't listed in his work calendar. In fact, there was no record of any meeting that night. Security cameras from a restaurant he claimed to have visited showed no sign of him entering or leaving. When confronted, Daniel hesitated and then claimed he had made a last-minute change. He had gone to meet the client somewhere else, somewhere with no cameras. Detective Cross began to suspect Daniel, but the evidence wasn't strong enough. Then came a breakthrough, or at least it seemed like one. A few days later, a woman named Clara Jennings walked into the police station. She claimed she'd been having an affair with Daniel for nearly 6 months. Clara described Daniel as charming but secretive, a man who often spoke about feeling trapped in a loveless marriage. She provided text messages and receipts showing Daniel had spent the night at a hotel near the outskirts of town, confirming part of the story, but not all. The timeline didn't quite add up. He could have easily driven home, committed the crime, and gone back before morning. Still, Daniel maintained his innocence. Then, another twist. The forensic team found no fingerprints on the wine glass Rebecca had supposedly used. Not even her own. The killer had wiped it clean. Moreover, the digitalis traces were found not in the glass itself but on the lip of the bottle, as if someone had carefully dosed the wine before pouring it. The murder was staged so perfectly that even seasoned investigators admitted it looked almost professional. And then came the moment that left everyone speechless. One of Rebecca's home security cameras, previously assumed to be offline, contained a corrupted file. After hours of digital reconstruction, technicians recovered a few seconds of blurry footage from a night of the murder. The timestamp, 11:47 p.m. The image, a tall figure standing near the back door, wearing gloves and a hood, no face visible. But in the reflection of a glass cabinet, a faint outline of a ring, the same unique wedding band Daniel always wore. Still, when confronted with this evidence, Daniel didn't flinch. He said, "That's not me. Someone wants you to think it is." It seemed impossible. Every piece of evidence pointed toward him. Yet something about his calmness, his absolute certainty, made even the detectives second-guess themselves. Could he truly have pulled off such a flawless crime, or was someone framing him with expert precision? A few days later, Clara, the woman who confessed the affair, went missing. Her car was found near a lake, her phone abandoned on the seat. A single message was left unsent on her screen. "I know who really did it." That was the moment the case spiraled from mysterious to nightmarish. Now, it wasn't just about a murder. It was about a mastermind, someone capable of orchestrating a crime so perfect, so detailed, that even the police were being led by the nose. Every new clue raised more questions than answers. Was Daniel the killer? Or had someone else, someone in the shadows, designed this entire scenario to destroy him and get away clean? Detective Cross once said in an interview, "I've seen hundreds of murders, but this one was built like a machine. Every part fit too perfectly. And that's what scared me most. The perfect murder doesn't exist. But if it ever did, this was the closest anyone had ever come." When the case of Dr. Rebecca Hale reached national headlines, Cedarbrook was no longer a quiet, forgotten town. The story of the perfect murder had gripped the country. A respected doctor poisoned in her own home, her husband accused but unproven guilty, and a mistress who vanished before she could tell her side of the story. It was a kind of mystery that left people both fascinated and terrified. Because if a murder could be this perfect, then no one was truly safe. Detective Evan Cross and his team spent weeks combing through every scrap of evidence. Daniel Hale was brought in again and again for questioning. The public had already made up its mind. In their eyes, he was a cold-blooded husband who killed his wife for love and freedom. But the problem was, nothing stuck. Every piece of evidence, no matter how convincing it looked. Always had a hole in it, just big enough for reasonable doubt to slip through. Take the wedding ring reflection, for example. Forensics couldn't conclusively prove it was Daniel's. The footage was too grainy, the timestamp slightly off. Even the fingerprints wiped from the wine glass. That could mean careful staging, or it could mean Rebecca cleaned herself. The poison could have been slipped in earlier that day by anyone who had access to her home. Still, Daniel's calm demeanor during interrogations only deepened suspicion. When asked directly if he killed his wife, he simply said, "If I had, do you really think I'd make it look that obvious?" The media turned him into a villain. Tabloids printed headlines like Husband of the Year or Killer of the Century. His house was vandalized. He couldn't go anywhere without whispers following him. And then when Clara Jennings's car was found near that lake, Daniel's fate seemed sealed in the court of public opinion. But then, something unexpected happened. A fisherman discovered Clara's body 2 weeks later, miles downstream from where her car had been found. The autopsy revealed she'd been dead for less than 48 hours. That meant she hadn't been killed the night she disappeared. She'd been kept alive for nearly 2 weeks. Her cause of death? The same poison that killed Rebecca. The pattern was undeniable now. Whoever was behind this wasn't just killing out of passion or rage. This was a message, a game, and someone was still playing. Detective Cross's team re-examined the case from the ground up. They looked at financial records, digital traces, everything. Then one night, Cross's junior officer stumbled onto something chilling. A deleted email from Rebecca's computer, sent 2 days before her death, to an address belonging to Dr. Leonard Breyer, a former colleague who'd left the hospital under mysterious circumstances a year earlier. Breyer had once been accused of malpractice, and it was Rebecca's testimony that got him fired. Since then, he'd vanished from public life. No address, no contact, no trace. But when investigators dug deeper, they found that the digitalis used in Rebecca's murder matched the chemical compound from a specific batch produced by the lab Breyer used to work in. It was a long shot, but it was something. Detectives traced a storage unit rented under a fake name in Breyer's old town. Inside, they found laboratory equipment, surveillance photos of Rebecca's house, and most disturbingly, photographs of Daniel and Clara together. The truth began to unfold like a sinister puzzle. Someone had been following all three of them, Rebecca, Daniel, and Clara, for months. Someone who knew every move, every secret, every weakness. But before police could locate Dr. Breyer, the storage unit was set on fire. All evidence destroyed. The case went from hopeful to hopeless overnight. Without physical proof, everything remained circumstantial. And while the theory of Breyer's revenge made sense, the timing, precision, and setup were too perfect, too intelligent. Some investigators began to whisper. Maybe Breyer wasn't the only one. Maybe someone else had joined in. Or worse, someone on the inside. The case dragged on for years. Daniel Hale was never officially charged, but his life was over. His medical license revoked, his friends gone, his reputation ruined. He left Cedarbrook and disappeared from public view. Some say he moved abroad. Others claim he changed his name. Detective Cross, however, never stopped digging. In one of his last interviews before retirement, he revealed something that was never made public. The earring found at the scene, the one that didn't belong to Rebecca, was later matched to a pair found in Clara's apartment. Meaning, Clara had been in the house before Rebecca's death. The timeline now looked very different. Could the affair have turned dark? Could Clara have poisoned Rebecca out of jealousy, only to be silenced later by someone who wanted to tie up loose ends? Or had Daniel discovered the affair and orchestrated everything, framing Clara, then eliminating her to cover his tracks? No one knew for sure. Every theory seemed equally possible. Every truth led to another lie. But the most chilling detail came years later, when a local construction crew tore down the Hale residence to build new homes. Behind one of the kitchen walls, hidden inside an old vent, they found a small metallic recording device. The last file was dated the night of the murder. The recording was short, less than a minute. It captured faint sounds, glasses clinking, quiet conversation, and then a voice that sent shivers through everyone who heard it. Rebecca's voice. "You don't have to do this." A pause. Then a calm male voice replied, It's already done. The identity of that voice was never confirmed. Today, the case of Dr. Rebecca Hale remains one of the most haunting mysteries in true crime history. Law students study it as an example of how evidence can both reveal and conceal the truth. Forensic analysts call it the blueprint of a perfect murder. Every few years, a new documentary revisits the case, each offering a different theory. The jealous lover, the vengeful ex-colleague, the cold-blooded husband, or the possibility that all three were pawns in something far bigger. Detective Cross passed away in 2023. In his final notes, found in a sealed folder marked Hale case, he wrote one line that still echoes in online discussions and Reddit threads to this day. The scariest part isn't that someone got away with murder. It's that they might have done it again,